Hey, did you hear? Which day of the week is the potato's least favorite day? It's really quite sad. You didn't know? It's Friday. Get it? Potatoes, french fries. Today we're going to study plant parts. Each plant has 6 main parts: the leaves, the roots, the stem, the seed, the flower, and the fruit. We're going to talk about each one of these individually, how they play a role in your food, and all of the cool things they do within biology. Let's start with the leaves. The main purpose of the leaf in any plant is to photosynthesize. They collect sunshine, and there's a chemical process that goes on inside the cells to create sugar for the plant to live off of. In addition, the leaves experience a gas and moisture exchange. So this is kind of cool. Usually on the underside of the leaf, there are these little microscopic holes called stomata. And the excess water that the plant takes up but needs to get out of it, and also gas exchange happens out of these little tiny holes. One of the things that's really cool if you live in a deserty type climate is the stomata tend to open up more at night than in the day. And that's how the plant conserves water to survive a desert climate. Next, let's talk about the roots. I love this graphic about roots because it shows you just how huge a root system can become in a plant. Now, plants either have fibrous or tap roots. The picture on your screen is of a fibrous root system that has many, many tendrils spreading out. They say in trees that the root system is similar in size to the canopy of the tree. So however wide and tall the branches go on a tree, that's how wide and deep the roots go on a plant. Now, part of the reason it's important for roots to go deep is that's what anchors the plant. That's what allows it to sway when the wind is blowing instead of just tumbling over in most cases. Roots also have to be able to go very deep in order to soak up water and other nutrients that the plant needs. Now, we eat roots sometimes, and so sometimes we are growing the root for the root and the plant is the byproduct, but sometimes it's the other way around. The root is the byproduct of the plant we're growing. Now we move on to the stem. Now the stem of a plant is kind of cool. Inside of it there is little teeny tiny microscopic, I picture them like little straws. And they let water and nutrients travel up and down the stem so that the plant has them in the place they need them. The stem's other major purpose is to hold the plant upright so that all the leaves can have equal access, or as close as possible, to the sun. Now, not all plants have stems that go up. Sometimes the plant has a stem that goes sideways or horizontal, like a pumpkin plant. Pumpkins have stems that go out all over the soil, and then the big broad leaves take up their own space to get sunshine. There are 2 types of stems that are probably interesting to you. The first is called a rhizome. A rhizome is a horizontal stem, but it's underground. I always notice rhizomes most when I'm pulling weeds because they're a very common thing in different weeds or non-native plants, and so you pull one and it's attached to the other. Another really interesting part, especially if you liked my joke at the beginning, is a stem or a type of stem called a tuber. A tuber is actually a thickened underground stem that the plant is storing food in. Potatoes are tubers. And so really, when you eat a potato, you're eating all of that food storage that the plant had stored away underground in case it needed to live off of it later. Next, let's talk about seeds. Now, we already did a little bit of a lesson on how to turn a seed into a plant, that process called germination. But sometimes we actually consume the seed as a food. For example, the kernels of corn are seeds. That's how we get a new plant. They are also the food that we eat. Same thing with pinto beans. A seed is important because it contains the genetic material for a new plant. And so everything that's needed to grow a new plant is inside. There are really cool careers out there of seed geneticists, people who change and improve seeds, as well as, did you know there's actually seed banks? So every time we change a seed, they try to store away that original genetic information, because sometimes we don't make good changes. Sometimes we need to go back to a native seed or an heirloom seed to get the best product. Now we talk about flowers. The main purpose of a flower to a plant is actually reproduction. Now the reason flowers are so decorative and bright is they're actually trying to attract pollinators. And so in the middle of the flower, there are all of the reproductive parts. Sometimes they're on the same plant, sometimes they're on different plants. And when the pollen combines with the egg, it then creates a seed. And that seed has part of the genetics of the parents, both parent plants, and can create a new plant. When those reproductive parts are on different plants, we need bugs like honeybees or anything else that is inside flowers to get the pollen on them and transfer it to another plant. This can also be done through the wind and a variety of other methods. So while flowers are my favorite thing also to put in a vase on my table, they play a very important biological purpose. And you should look it up. There are actually some flowers that are edible. Cool, huh? Next, let's talk about fruit. Now, most people, when they hear the word fruit, think of food for us. But to a plant, it's a very different thing. And so the plant's purpose in the fruit, the biological purpose, is actually a container to protect the seed so it can grow a new plant. And in some cases, it helps that seed travel. And so oftentimes inside fruit, we see the seeds. Not all of that fruit gets consumed by humans. So let's think about a typical apple in my orchard. The apple maybe gets ripe late. We have an early freeze. So the apple's no longer good for food. I'm busy teaching at school, so the apple just hangs on the tree there until all of the insides are kind of rotten and mushy. That's actually good for the seed. It's still protecting the seed. It falls down out of the tree. My sheep that also live in the orchard come and they smash it into the ground. Theoretically, the moisture and the juice from that fruit could fertilize and protect the seed if it got put into some soft soil so that it could grow a new plant. But there's other ways that seeds get spread through fruit. For example, what if a deer comes in my orchard and eats the apple, goes to the neighbor's house, poops on their lawn? That seed likely made it all the way through the digestive tract and could create a new apple tree in another place. Seeds and fruit are really kind of an interesting combination. But aside from fruit, you should know that seeds have lots of ways of traveling. When the wind blows, it might get stuck on the bottom of your pant leg and get transferred to a new place. And we actually see this being problematic sometimes when we're looking at weeds. Now, some students of mine have asked me to cover what then is the difference between a fruit and a vegetable? And how come we talk about all these plants having fruits, but sometimes the things we're calling fruits, a chef might call a vegetable? Well, here's the problem. We use the term fruit in several different ways. Plant scientists define fruit as the seed-bearing structure in a flowering plant formed after the ovary after flowering. So the plant flowers, it gets pollinated, it then creates the fruit from the flower and goes on in reproduction. This could include all sorts of different things. Things they don't call fruits in the grocery store, like a corn kernel, a grain of wheat, a bean pod, and then things we're used to, like an apple or those types of fruits. But in common language, the language you and I use every day, we usually use the word fruit to mean some sort of fleshy structure that surrounds a seed. It's usually kind of sweet or sour, and it's edible in its raw state, like a banana, a strawberry, a grape, lemons, oranges. So really, we use the same word in two different ways. Plant scientists are always going to talk about fruit in terms of plant reproduction. And the people at the grocery store, or the chef, or your mom when she's shaking her finger at you to eat your vegetables, are going to use the words fruit and vegetables in different ways as well. But the cool thing is that we are consuming plants in all different forms all around us. Lettuce, for example, is it a vegetable? The plant scientist would tell you it's just a leaf. I would tell you it's delicious. So eat your fruits and your vegetables and your leaves and all the other plant parts you want. Have a good day.